screaming in my head belligerently. They're violent. They're pretending to be voices from coming from outside. I just want to make it clear that what I hear in my head is not coming from outside. There are records produced with the weapon that they're using to investigate me, which happens to be a mind control, mind reading telepathy war weapon. A war weapon to investigate me with. And they're trying to make these claims that I'm violent, that I'm fighting with people, that I'm this, that I'm that, that the voices I hear that are coming from outside. I mean, the tricks and the games that these terrorists talking in my head are playing are endless as far as I've come to find out. So there's absolutely no way in how I can feel I can feel comfortable uh, just moving on without live streaming. I want to live stream every second of my life. I want them sentenced to death. They're Egyptian American Muslim women terrorists. They made 98% of my hair fall out. They're mutilating my face, stretching the. They're causing me a stroke right now. The skin of my forehead, they're making this skin right here swell and stretch, and then I lose weight, and then it like starts to sag right here so that I look unattractive. And then if you see the homeless people that their faces after these terrorists have mutilated them with this weapon, I mean, what they could do with this is just, it's so disturbing. They're murderers. These bitches are clearly murderers. They're talking in my head. They're trying to find a way to murder me and get away with it. And the weapon, it can read your mind. It's a telepathy weapon. It has access to know everyone and everything in your proximity. So everything is at these terrorists' disposal. And basically the way the government set up the weapon is so that the terrorists, if they're conducting an investigation, they can't make the claims that they didn't have access to certain things so that they can further investigate. They want to nip it in the butt while they can. They don't want them sitting behind this weapon because it's dangerous. So the terrorists talking in my head, like I said, they're screaming. Obviously, they're trying to make claims and get the weapon hung up, that there needs to be a further investigation done, because the voices I hear in my head can't be traced, but that's because it's the terrorist talking in my head, talking solely in my head. But the weapon apparently cannot distinguish if so when the records are produced and they're deposited in whatever system. I guess it runs the records through, kind of like how YouTube scans all of your live streams to make sure it's community. It goes by community guidelines. It's the same thing. And if you don't abide by the community guidelines, Facebook will say, or YouTube will say, sorry, you have too many strikes. You violated community guidelines. You can't stream for a week, 2 weeks, or whatever the case may be, or permanently. And so the weapon that they're using is similar to that. So it scans the records to see if there's any indications that the voices I'm hearing are inside my head or outside. Okay. And so it cannot, without records like other video footage records with audio recordings, to identify, it can't really distinguish if the voices I hear are coming from inside or outside. On top of the fact, it also can, basically, the terrorists can go and hack into my neighbors' heads and find out if my neighbors are the ones talking, if they hear what I hear, if it isn't them. So all of this is available to them, but the terrorists talking in my head, so they're layering up, they're like several of them using the weapon to surveil me, okay? And basically what they're trying to do is, like, while they all scream in my head, they're creating records. So there are several of them that hear what I hear, but they're all talking in my head though simultaneously and trying to layer up on their records so that it's not suspicious, like, oh, well, why didn't the neighbors say anything, why didn't, so that they can say, well, we all have the same records and we all heard the same thing, but they're still talking in my head. So there is their, like, it's their soft spot, it's their weak spot where I'm just like, I'm kicking them basically where it hurts. It's because they're talking in my head and I'm making it clear. I'm live streaming that I can't capture their voices on my live stream. On top of the fact I'm taking medications, psychiatric medications, and these terrorists that they're investigating me, and I'm seeking medical attention, and I'm obviously not storing my medications, and I'm not and I'm taking the medications, and I'm not, I'm obviously taking them as prescribed. There's absolutely, like, I'm doing what I'm told because based on what I'm saying to other people, and so many people at this point, that it's like it's been unanimous that what I'm experiencing happens to resemble schizophrenia. So to a psychiatrist, hearing it from my mom, hearing it from my sister, hearing it from the police department, hearing it from the crisis assessment team, hearing it from my neighbors who at first I was accusing, not these ones, the ones in Tustin, that no one hears the voices that I hear and that I'm losing my marbles. That there are too many people saying the same thing. So if the psychiatrist is to prescribe me medications and I'm taking it as prescribed, everyone's doing what they've been instructed to do lawfully. Okay? And so these terrorists talking in my head are not arguing, because if this wasn't in my head internally, then why haven't they come forward to say Renee is lying? So like I said, there are Egyptian American Muslim women terrorists talking in my head with a war weapon, and I'm taking medications. People are seeing it as schizophrenia, and these terrorists cannot be in my head using the weapon to talk inside my head. That's not what they were permitted to do. That's not what the laws governing over these weapons allow for them to do. These terrorists are using it to launder money. Ultimately, they're doing it to launder money and stay behind the weapon. So part of me is starting, because I was like, why can they talk in some people's heads and not others? And something dawned on me. I said, maybe they don't have to talk in everybody's head. Maybe they only find one culprit. Well, the terrorist said culprit, so I'll say culprit. One subject, okay, of their investigation, to talk in their head specifically, so that the weapon gets hung up on looking for these voices that this person hears, and identifies it as something that needs further investigating, while everybody else, they don't actually have to, while they may not have to talk in my head, but just so that they can create this illusion that further investigation there's something that needs further investigating. So, and being that the weapon can't trace so if it can't source it, then the investigation's clearly it's not complete. So the terrorist gets it hung up to further investigate. And I'm starting to think that that's how they operate with these weapons. It's like they could use it at their discretion to do whatever they want, but in order to further investigate, so that they can remain behind the weapon, they have a subject that they attack and scream in their heads to manipulate the records and make it seem like there's another investigation they need to conduct once they've murdered and gotten away with murdering that person that they've been screaming in their head. I swear. So they're trying to make it sound like the voices I hear are coming from outside when they're not. And she did make a good point, which was my point from the very beginning, but I'm like, so I'm still trying to decipher, like, how the weapon operates completely, or it could be that the weapon times out and it investigates on its own and it concludes its investigation, which like I said, means they don't necessarily have to talk. Which means, could they possibly be sticking this to? I don't know. And now I'm like, they're playing with my head at the same time, so there's a lot going on, and I'm not quite sure I'm grasping. Like, some of it is making sense, some of it isn't. They don't have to talk in my head. The weapon works on its own. They're trying to trigger the weapon. Unless the person committing a crime is deaf.